Roman Reigns convinces Sami Zayn to turn on his best friend.
Actually, no, that's exactly what happened. Hello and welcome to What Went Down. I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture, joined by Michael Hamflett from WhatCulture. Survivor Series WarGames has just finished. And Michael Hamflett, was that the best Survivor Series WarGames ever?
By the strictest definition, I think it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the only Survivor Series, technically the worst and the best. And I was getting a little bit nervous halfway through this premium live event, if I'm perfectly honest, about how it was going to be received and what have you, and how Papa H was going to be judged off the back of, well, arguably his first Big Four pay-per-view, because SummerSlam, yes, he was in charge, but it was like, you know, he'd been there for about a week or whatever. And then the ending to that show was so sensational, I have done a complete 180 on this show.
It was an event of ups and downs, not to throw Simon Miller a cheap plug, which will soon be coming to YouTube. Wherever you click on our faces, you'll find his too. There were some dodgy moments across this 3 and a bit hours, but the highs were extraordinarily high. This was ultimately a show that we will remember most for the best storyline in wrestling. Yeah. And when you have that at your disposal, you have the opportunity to present something great. And I think it's safe to say they did that here.
Yes, exactly. Let's start at the beginning of the show, though, because it opened, they sort of thought this was going to happen. It was going to be topped and tailed by the WarGames matches. It opened with the women's WarGames match, of course. And I think it's fair to say a rather surprise win for the babyfaces. Yes, of course, they had a returning Becky Lynch on their team, but you had Alexa Bliss sort of constantly side-eyeing Bianca Belair in the build-up. I didn't miss that. No. And I sense that's not the end of that, by the way. No. And it just felt like, you know, with difference maker Mammy, Rhea Ripley in there, they were maybe going to utilise that as a springboard for her to, you know, dominate, get the victory for her team and, well, get on that path towards presumably facing Bianca Belair for the world title at some point. Fingers crossed WrestleMania, personally. But, yeah, that didn't happen, although it did kind of take everything to take Rhea Ripley out of the match. I'm talking blue mist. I'm talking everyone hitting just everything on her, and in the end, I think her getting, well, her sort of putting herself through a ladder because Mia Yim, who had a great performance, I thought as well, was just all over her, trying to choke her out. Unsurprisingly, though, 2 of the stars of the match got their team the victory. That is Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch.
Yeah, uneven throughout, I would say this. There were some definite highs. Mia Yim, I think you're right to identify her and Rhea Ripley were bang in the mood for this. Mia Yim took some absolutely tremendous bumps, some hellacious moments. Io Sky did the moonsault that she's done before. It was binless, unfortunately, but she did a spot off the top of the cage. She has done in, I think, every WarGames.
She did do some bin stuff later on.
There was some bin stuff. They observed the bin law and the importance of that. It was just, I think, too subdued in the dead spot to be remembered as this classic WarGames match. There was a lot of stopping and setting up weapon stuff and everybody resetting a little bit. WWE can never really get out of its own way with these WarGames matches, I don't think. And I think it's really hard for them to capture the flowing violence. And there was just a lot of little stoppages. Wait, do a thing. Wait, do a thing. Wait, do a thing. The finish was super impressive. The, like, cavalcade of KODs and manhandle slams that led to Becky's big spot through the table at the end. Felt big time, felt spectacular. And if anything, I would say this was more a welcome back to Becky Lynch more than it was a kind of profile of anybody else. I think you're right to spot, again, the Alexa Bliss teases. That wasn't by accident, nor clearly has it been for the last few weeks now. That feels like it will be Bianca Belair's maybe Christmas programme, perhaps, the TV programme between now and the Royal Rumble. But yeah, this felt like Becky Lynch's night more than anything else, and fine too. Like, there were worse ways to bring her back and make her feel immediately like a top concern. Yeah. We can all have a good guess at what a WrestleMania programme's going to be. So this match was as good as any to remind anybody that she comes right back in at the top.
Yeah, Nikki Cross did a nice high spot as well, coming off the top, because she's bonkers. I think it was Kyan Sky getting put through the table by Becky Lynch, and then eventually Dakota Guy got pinned by Becky Lynch for a win for the baby faces. And then we move on to both WarGames matches, sort of 40 minutes, like. It's such a weird dynamic because it goes sort of 25 minutes and then they go, right, now we've started.
This is the real quiz.
It's an age-old complaint with regards to WarGames. Let's move on, though. AJ Styles versus Finn Balor. This was really all about Dominic Mysterio, as everything is, if you ask me. But once he and Damian Priest had brawled off into the crowd with Gallows and Anderson, these two lads, like, I saw a lot of people in our comment section, right, saying this is just a Raw match. And I could see that to a certain extent. But I also have to give credit to them because A, they're just great together, and you saw in the match that followed it, like just putting two people out there that are good at, can just do some stuff. Doesn't always go to plan. No. I thought this was really, really nicely executed, and they beat the crap out of each other.
They did. They were both wearing the physical scars of war after the fact. AJ's chest and Finn Balor's back. Especially for a move that we couldn't watch. We couldn't see what it was watching live, but I'm curious on the second watch to see what it was that gave him that horrendous red mark.
I don't know. Into a turnbuckle, I don't know.
It was. I think this match feels almost perfectly divided into three very obvious sections. And I just think what brought it down ultimately was that the middle section, so you had the portion where the Judgment Day and the OC were out there, and then they brawled off to the back. Hilariously so, by the way. Dominic played his part brilliantly here. He wanted none of this generic crowd brawl until he was forced into it by AJ. Then you had this quite hot closing sequence where the fans couldn't really pick a winner. And there was just a middle portion where it was all great work because it's Finn Balor and AJ Styles, but I wouldn't say it was that engaging.
Yeah.
Didn't feel like they really had the crowd. And I think that'll be, ironically, for two men that just have these incredible physiques, these awesome torsos. I think this will be remembered most for its flabby middle. I just feel like this was... It took a little bit long to get where it wanted to go. And then when it got there, people were more than game to watch it. AJ winning clean with a phenomenal forearm. Felt like he'd finally concluded his business with the Judgment Day. So there's, this is the stuff we ask for. A conclusive finish, an actual payoff to a storyline that's been going on quite a while. I just don't know if it needed, it's staple Triple H stuff. Did it need maybe an extra 6 or 7 minutes that it got, like, on balance?
Speaking of which... Next up, it was the SmackDown Women's Championship match. Let me just check this. Sorry, man. Rude to do my notes in the middle of this. Oh, this wasn't a handicap match. Because it certainly came across as that. It's Ronda Rousey versus Shotzi. Look, no one went into this thinking Shotzi was going to win the title. And despite the way it was sort of laid out, no one thought halfway through, ooh, maybe she's got a chance here. Despite the fact she fought off a team who should just be running through everyone, in my opinion, right now, to set up the presumed Becky Lynch match at WrestleMania. Shayna, being the sort of help to Ronda, I think is a great potential storyline, but not when it's presented like this. And then you had that and the sort of botched DDT on the apron, that the sort of miscommunication. It never seemed to flow very well. We saw a replay and I was trying to, the Shotzi had come off the top and Ronda turned into a nice hip toss, but it just didn't work really. It didn't look like these two were on the same page. In the end, sort of hip toss off the top rope from Ronda, followed by Piper's Pit, followed by a brief glimmer of like, that's what I want from Ronda Rousey, of just being like, this is for you, Shayna, and then she goes to break her arm and Shotzi has to tap out. But yeah, rough going a lot of this match.
Yeah, this is one of them cases, and unfortunately now that feels like 2 in a row for Ronda, where it's not so much that two wrestlers are on different pages, but they're in different books entirely. It wasn't just a case of bad chemistry, it was a sense of not really knowing what the match was supposed to deliver. Was it a case of them just trying to serve too many masters with Shotzi here? Did you want to just have an opponent for Ronda, but somebody that you needed to beat, but then for whatever reason you don't book her against somebody she can beat like a drum? I'm not suggesting that the SmackDown women's roster is that glittering at the moment that you can send just anybody out there, but the modus operandi should just be these two women trucking other women, like bulldozing through them, not have the clown stuff on the outside where Shayna Baszler is dispatched constantly by Shotzi in this, as you pointed out, 2-on-1 advantage. That story didn't feel anywhere near well enough told.
The spots were so convoluted. I'm going to help you flip over and
anything to get to this idea that Shotzi could be in an advantageous position that never once felt real, because when ultimately the two women were in the ring and the cards were on the table, it was Ronda's all day. So the fact that she found herself in any struggle at all just never really felt convincing. There was a point where Ronda, you made this point, every now and then Ronda would flash a look, some eyes, some teeth, whatever it was, where you can really feel that she's in this character. She's trying to lock into the character, but then the match is not really serving it. There was a point where she was picking which ankle she was going to break, and she's having fun with it, and she's trying to get a bit more into this character where she's just taking the mick, but they're still asking for what? This went over 5 minutes.
According to Wikipedia, it went 7 minutes. It could have gone 2.
It should have gone 2. It should have been done in under 2 minutes, to be honest, and I just don't think the way that they're laying these matches out is helping the Ronda and Shayna characters one bit.
Yeah, then we got the triple threat match for the United States Championship, and I was a bit concerned halfway through this match because people say in the comments this is just another Raw match. So you've had a really, kind of botchy SmackDown Women's Championship match. You've had a good War Games match, but nothing that's, you're going to be like, oh, I've got to go back and watch that the next day. And that you had AJ Finn again, another sort of Raw match. And halfway through Theory versus Rollins versus Lashley, you were like, oh, it's sort of trending in the same direction. It was like they were getting rid of Theory so they could fight out between the two of them. And, that's fine, but it's nothing really that special. And then, my word, did they turn it on the home straight. And I've got to say, I love the finish to this.
Yeah.
There was the bit where Theory... What a rehabilitation Triple H has done for Austin Theory, by the way. I've got to hold my hands up because I was burying it left, right, and centre when he first did the whole... The cash-in's still stupid, in my opinion. But I was like, cool, that character's dead in the water. And in the space of, 2-3 weeks, he's turned it around. Austin Theory is now your United States champion. There was a bit where I literally bought him just winning it because they did the Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley finish from the Saudi show. And Seth broke that up brilliant with a huge frog splash. And then, I was going to let you talk about the finish here.
Well, we had what we thought was going to be the finish where Seth spied both men coming to their feet and he used Lashley as a springboard into the stomp.
Yeah.
Sorry, other way around. Theory as a springboard into the stomp onto Lashley, which left Lashley prone and out theoretically. But then Theory found his way back to his feet and then him and Seth were jockeying for position a little bit. And
Lashley got them both in a hurt lock at one point.
Oh yeah, took them both down. They were like this. It was like really quite experimental and impressive. The stuff that they arrived at before, obviously Theory was able to get the win, and I would say it's some shock.
Yeah.
Claim the title at this point, pinning Seth no less as well. So getting a measure of revenge for the fact that he's been kind of pied by everybody, but especially by Seth in recent weeks. I don't know what to make of this because I too admire where they're at with Theory. But I don't want to create this idea of this bad habit that, man, if you're going to get somebody over, you got to absolutely kill them first.
Yeah.
Because there's quite a lot of that going on in WWE at the moment. And I don't want this to become, we're seeing it. Does this mean now? Like, this Austin Theory thing is very much a case. You watch this match back, look at the reactions. People were stunned, surprised, but it definitely got people up for this. This last sort of 3 or 4 minutes was super, super hot. But to now... Is this trying to teach viewers a lesson of, hey, let it play out, it's WWE? So what, Mustafa Ali getting thrown around as other people's weapons on Raw? Are we supposed to strap in for the big Mustafa Ali Royal Rumble push? Is this Ricochet getting this banana skin win over Braun Strowman is supposed to be? Keep your eye out for Ricochet Mania. It's just, I don't want to have to see these people suffer so much just to get out. But this is absolutely one, rarely can I say this for the let it play out WWE crowd because the burial, the sort of the nature of the burial being so hard on Raw has now been completely counterbalanced by this win here. So we are where we need to be with Austin Theory, and they've managed to get the briefcase off him as well.
Yeah.
So people are right to say net gains at this point.
Yeah.
I will say that. But I just wish we didn't have to go on that specific journey just to get to a really, really hot 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. But I love the finish to this match. And then we got to the main event. It was the Bloodline versus the Brawling Brutes. I suppose they're sort of the extended Brawling Brutes now, aren't they? And the story of this also sort of bled in from SmackDown, if you watched it, with Sammy chatting to KO and then Jay sort of overhearing that and hiding behind the Bloodline's door and confronting Sammy about it, and Sammy saying he didn't speak to KO, and the Bloodline actually being sensible and watching the show. And then throughout the show, you had Jay going to see Roman and saying, you got to deal with this twat, he's not really part of our team. And then Roman had an incredibly tense meeting with Sami Zayn, and then Roman, as Jay went to see him, was like, right, what are we going to do? And he's like, I know exactly what we're going to do. Jay starts the match, Sami gets sent out as the second person from the Bloodline, and it just went from there. And I know I'm biased, I've said this for quite some time now. This is my favourite storyline in all of wrestling. I think it's the best storyline in all of wrestling. I think Sami Zayn deserves all the credit for all of this. But the added wrinkle now of Kevin Owens in there and the catharsis of what happened in this main event, which we'll get to sort of chronologically. I was nearly in tears at the end of this. I loved it. It was so good.
I'm not convinced that Triple H or WWE or whatever really can master war games. Maybe wrestling can't master this double cage thing and needs to get over it, because I'm not convinced of Blood and Guts either. But I am convinced that the Bloodline can elevate everything. I'm not suggesting this was like a rising tide that needed to raise a ship, but I don't think we'd talk about this War Games match with any sort of great reverence, particularly without having this storyline to speak of. This was yet another case of a lot of convenient brawling or sitting around or wrestlers using their 3 minutes before the next person comes out to put weapons into a cage or whatever. Like a lot of time killing, a lot of... I'm not going to... There was a spot that I sense will generate some conversation. Was the 50 beats of the Bodhrán really any more or less convoluted than a Young Bucks spot? Like, that's not me trying to be, like, create a kickoff, but like what I'm thinking of specifically is that super kick arrangement with Death Triangle that generated this similar kind of conversation from Full Gear last week. It felt very staged, where they all kicked up at the end.
Oh, I remember it. It was rubbish.
It felt very like, part of a show rather than part of physical theatre, as did this. Are they any different, is the point I'm trying to make? I don't think they are. I think like they're both...
sports entertainers.
They're sports entertainment. But what is different is the bloodline.
Yeah.
That was always going to be the difference in here. The drama out the AS from SmackDown that has transposed into this pay-per-view with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn.
Didn't touch.
It didn't touch until they absolutely had to, so they made it all count. The points that they then showed you in the replay of the times in which Sami did have Jay's back that were maybe not focused upon quite as heavily in the match itself.
Despite the fact that Jay super kicked him.
The protection of Solo Sikoa as the real muscle, the guy that Roman should be
One
back
of the best NXT call-ups I've ever seen this.
By far. Leading us right to the finish. Which, I will let you describe in all its beautiful and grisly
loads of people
glory.
got put through loads of tables in amongst all this. I think Ridge the Fridge got speared through a table. Drew got slammed through a table by Solo Sikoa. And eventually it all boils down to and Jey Uso super kicked Sami Zayn earlier on in the match when he was going to kick Butch, I think it was, who'd been torturing Jey Uso in the first 5 minutes of this match. Anyway, so... Roman Reigns, Kevin Owens, of course, it all comes back down to those two, and there's back and forth between them, and then it looks like Kevin Owens is going to pop up Batwoman. No, Superman punch. Oh, no. And he's going to spear him. And in the end, Kevin Owens hits the stunner on Roman Reigns, and he's going to pin the tribal chief. And then we all have to acknowledge Kevin Owens. 1, 2. Sami Zayn doesn't dive in to break up the pinfall. He just stops the referee from counting to 3. There's a moment between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens is going, "Is this your family?" And Sami's like, "He kind of is. I'm Sami Uso." He catches Jimmy Uso, I think he is, just trying to super kick Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens catches the foot, and in that moment, Sami makes his choice. Big old oi in the bollocks to Kevin Owens. He goes down. There's a look that I just want Roman Reigns to give me between Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns. And Sami Zayn plants his flag, becomes full Uso in that moment. Haluva kick to Kevin Owens, but before he falls down, before he collapses, Sami Zayn catches him, lays him out, gestures to Jey Uso, who hits the big splash off the top. Oh, there was a nice Super 1D as well earlier in this match. That just reminded me. Hits the big splash off the top. 1, 2, 3. Jey Uso pins Kevin Owens. The Bloodline win War Games. But never mind all that bollocks. What matters afterwards is the acknowledgement of Roman Reigns for Sami Zayn. But more importantly than that, the hug between Jey and Sami. They are the Bloodline collectively with no if, ands, buts, or maybes, or whatever the bloody phrase is.
And don't underestimate the power of that hug, the biggest reaction of the whole night.
Yeah.
This is why...
Huge baby.
This is why a lot of those old-timers, they've lost credibility at this point, but it's why they say that telling stories is ultimately where the money is versus... It should be everything, by the way. They're idiots. But this is what they're talking about, because that hug that generated that reaction is because people are that invested in the characters. They were dealing with the shock and absorbing the drama of Sami making his choice. But having made the choice, he doesn't back down. He doubles down. And going in for that hug is obviously what gets that moment from the fans, because they now get to sit in Roman's head for a second and see that these two have found each other for the good of the bloodline, for the good of the cause. Sami is so exhilarated by the realization and the acknowledgement from Jay that he tears his shirt away, and you see them all line up in the end, and you can, for some reason, the eyes are really drawn to the fact they've all got these tribal tattoos, and Sami is there topless.
Get rid of the honorary, full loose now.
Time to get inked, I think, Sami. Time to be the screaming kid from the start of Moana, I think. Time to get it. I'm seeing Bloodline holiday sweaters. I'm seeing Sami talking about like those old tradition Samoan Christmases, like going back and bothering the Bloodline, bothering the sort of the forefathers, getting his own Christmas, like making a layer with tinsel, perhaps. This is the period now. We go into the holidays where the Bloodline are indeed more family than ever before, because we have, I mean, surely no further drama can befall Sami Zayn at the Royal Rumble or at Montreal's Elimination Chamber or at a little show known as WrestleMania in March, April. I just can't see it.
It's the best storyline in wrestling.
Well, you're saying it present tense. It's over now, isn't it?
Well,
that's the end of the story. Bloodline are all together forever. No further stuff can come from this. Like, really, legitimately incredible drama. I don't want these jokes to trivialise it because it was gripping.
Sensational.
Gripping stuff. If you're in, you're in. They've even gone to the trouble, I think. The conceit of the whole thing was starting to feel a touch stupid with Jay looking around the corner and are they watching? They've kind of laid that out as best as they can here.
Yeah.
Like Roman speaking to everybody has now been dealt with. Nothing has been invisible camera that I can think of. We're back to where we need to be. Going into SmackDown the next time they're all together, which hopefully is this Friday, is going to be must-see TV.
Yeah, I think, and the whole on the whole, this pay-per-view, this premium live event was maybe not living up to expectations, but in conclusion, it was very, very, very oozy by the end. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Like, share, subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts from. For daily wrestling podcasts, me and Hamlet are going to go and discuss this in more detail right now. Plus, you can let us know your thoughts on Twitter as well and send us questions for the news, of course, at WhatCulture WWE. Watch there. Follow both of us. Follow Michael Hamlet at
Michael Hamlet.
Follow me at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. Now comes the awkward point where I have to run off camera and stop the video. Acknowledge me. Acknowledge him. Thanks for watching. This has been What Went Down. Hamlet, wrap this thing up.
Acknowledge us.